Screen.
Just see him. Right, we're at 6:30. I'll open the meeting. Thank you for attending this hybrid meeting of Chorley Liaison on Wednesday the 19th of January 2022. For those who don't know me, I'm Councillor Gordon France and I'm the chair of this committee. Councillor Kim Snape is the vice chair. Kim's at the side of me there. Also present in the town hall are officers Jennifer Mullen and Coral Asbury. This is an hybrid meeting with members present in the council chamber and on Microsoft Teams. If you're in the council chamber and wish to speak, please indicate, and once I've brought you in, you will need to activate your microphone by pressing the button under your name. For those of you on Teams, please remain muted. If you wish to speak, please use the raise hand function. I will then bring you in at the appropriate time and you can unmute. This meeting is also being live streamed on YouTube. Apologies, Coral.
Yes, Chair. I've had apologies from councillors Sam Chapman, Alan Platt, Deborah Platt and Peter Gabbett.
Thank you, Coral. Right, number one, a welcome by myself. Happy New Year to all and thank you for your attendance. We'll move on to Item 2, minutes of the meeting held on Wednesday the 20th of October. Have we all had sight of these and has anybody got any problems? No, everybody okay? Just suppose we go ahead with those if nobody's got a problem. Thank you. Item 3 is a budget presentation and James Thompson, the Deputy Director of Finance, will be delivering a short presentation and taking questions. So James, are we there? Yeah?
I am here. Can you hear me?
Thank you for your attendance and over to you.
Okay, I'm going to attempt to share my screen. Apologies that I couldn't be there in person. We're a house full of Omicron at the moment, so we're all fine, but unfortunately, we're all self-isolating. My two kids are crawling up the walls at the moment, but never mind. Okay, so this is the budget update. Is that shared or no? Oh, dear me, that's not gone well.
No, we've not got it yet, James.
Okay. Well, I'm in the meeting. Screen 1. There we go. That's better. Is that better?
Yeah, we're there now. Yeah.
Fantastic. So I'll start the slideshow. So everyone's favourite time of the year, it's the budget. And I just thought I'd take you through some of the key messages really that is going to the draft budget tomorrow, exec cabinet, and then obviously after that we consult on the budget and then the final budget goes to back end of February. So just for those who might ask the question how the council is funded. How the council is funded is changing over the years. So if we look at 2016-17, we had 5 different areas really, which were the main sources of financing. This doesn't include things like fees and charges. It's just the main tranche of funding from government and also LCC. So council tax, we all know about, business rates, new homes bonus, which is a grant for building more homes. And Chorley did very well out of new homes bonus, especially due to the developments on Buckshaw. Income from LCC and finally the revenue support grant. So this is about close to £18 million in 16-17. The year after, the government is phasing out both new homes bonus and the revenue support grant. So you can see it reducing over time. Also, this was a point at which LCC stopped the recycling sharing agreement. So that's when the council introduced garden waste charges, trying to offset some of those reductions in cost. And then over time, in 1920, the retained business rates increased because we were part of a pilot across Lancashire, which allowed us to retain more business rates than we would normally. Unfortunately, that was only for 1 year, and the government, we went back to being part of the Lancashire pool. So we still retain more business rates than we did previously, but not as much as being part of the pilot, the 75% pilot really. So you can see there that roughly 2021 was similar to the 18-19 allocations. In terms of next year, this financial year, the government wanted to keep spending and funding at the same level. So you can see there was a reduction in new homes bonus because they're trying to phase it out. But to compensate for that, the government brought in the lower tier services grant allocation. So that's the sort of compensation for the drop in the spending power of the council. You have to understand as well, though, that the government assumes throughout all this that although the funding will reduce, we should be mitigating that partially by increasing council tax every year. And that's contrary to the way it was around 2010 when councils were encouraged not to increase council tax. It's the other way around now. We will reduce funding, but you can mitigate some of that by increasing council tax up to the referendum limit of 2%. And so that's why you can see the council tax bar chart there just increasing year on year, both due to growth and also due to increasing council tax. For next year, we had the announcement on the 16th of December. It was meant to be a 3-year budget allocation for the councils, which has been great for medium-term financial planning, but the Treasury unfortunately decided to just give us a 1-year allocation. And again, it's a sort of similar thing really, new homes bonus coming down, council tax going up, and this lower tier services grant allocation just there to help the council manage this transition really. Now for 2023-24, we can only assume that new homes bonus will be gone, and also that this lower tier services grant allocation won't happen again, because we don't really know anything else other than what will happen next year. So in terms of the budget assumptions, you can see this drop in funding. So if you look at it back in 16-17, close to 18 million. Now we're approaching more like 12.5, 13 million pound allocations now. And that's just because we don't know. So we can't assume things that we've not been told about really. So it would have been great to have that 3-year allocation, but for now we know what's happening next year in 22-23. Things aren't too bad. The level of funding is roughly in line with what it was last year. This financial year. So in terms of how the money is spent, so we see we've roughly got there £13 million worth of funding from government and other sources. How the money is spent, well, there's 2 charts here just to give you an idea of how strange last year was. So this is how the money was spent last year, and you can see what a whopping great piece of the pie chart COVID is there. And that's because the council dished out £34 million worth of business grants last year. And it just goes to show, in terms of the rest of the budget, how much work that involved and how big a slice of controllable expenditure that the council managed to deliver. If you change that without COVID, you can see a bit more of a normal point of view. Most of the spending goes into customer and digital. That includes the waste contract though, ICT, and obviously the front office. So that's the reason why we'd expect that to be larger. Other things to point out, policy and governance is at 24%, but this is gross expenditure. So some of those costs will be recharged as part of the shared services agreement, shared chief exec, deputy, my role's shared, many of the roles within policy and governance are shared. So this is just the gross expenditure. And other things in there like financing costs, like borrowing costs about 8%, and pension related costs about 3%. So just gives you a very high level idea of how the money that we receive is actually spent. The next thing to talk about is the budget. So at the moment, the draft budget is out. It's being hopefully approved at Exec Cabinet tomorrow. There's many different parts to it, but hopefully this will run through it. So it's a 3-year budget as normal, the revenue budget. Again, we don't have a 3-year allocation from government, so we can only make certain assumptions. The assumptions are that we'll carry on increasing council tax, that retained business rates will increase in line with inflation. And there you can see those 2 things that I mentioned before, the lower tier services grant and new homes bonus dropping out in 23-24, because we just don't know. New homes bonus may be replaced. We've not had any consultation on that or any announcements, so we can't unfortunately put anything in there. So that's why you see a big drop there from 14 million to 12.5. Net expenditure, of course, will increase with inflation, pay rises, inflation on contracts. We all know that inflation is high at the moment. So that leaves us with this gross budget deficit of 2 million to 4.3 million, which looks quite scary. But We of course have things that we put in place. Efficiency savings, shared services phase 1 has been approved. That's 270,000. 210,000 I think is going to exec cabinet at the same time, which is about the customer and digital and waste, the savings from sharing those areas. So we can see there that without reducing service provision, we're actually managed to make savings as well. And then income generation, which we all know that Chorley has been very successful at. Market Walk site bringing in net income after borrowing about 816, rising to 862,000. Primrose has been very successful. It's at 100% occupancy, bringing in a net income of 140,000. Well, obviously also encouraging independent living for our residents. Strawberry Fields is one that has been affected quite badly by COVID. The offices are actually 100% occupied now. It's just the remaining hot desks and pods that we are looking to restructure the building to make sure that it's now in line with the demands of the market. But for next year, we're assuming a break-even position and then net income to the council. The purchase of the logistics house site is in there as well. And also, you, when reading in the draft budget, notice that we were planning to increase garden waste subscriptions from £30 to £32.50. That's just about below inflationary increases and reflects the fact that as part of our fees and charges policy, we should be uplifting charges in line with inflation, because these are recovering the costs of delivering the service. So after these changes, you can see the deficit is reduced for next year to 281,000, and then roughly 2 million at the back end of the MTFS. Let's see if this works. Oh yeah, there it goes. What can we do to balance the budget for next year? Well, investment sites, we have a number coming online next year, including the Whittle surgery and Strawberry Meadows. After that, of course, we've got Tatton as well. So that's why you see an increase of income over the medium term period. And then council tax increases. So it is proposed in the budget that we increase council tax up to the referendum limit of 1.99% next year. And then after that as well, but that will be addressed every year, depending on the situation, depending on government funding. We may get new homes bonus next year, we don't know, and things like that. So that for 23, 24 onwards, that will be addressed as and when. I just realised the dates are wrong in that. That should be, never mind. So in terms of council tax increases, it's outlined in the report that this is where Chorley sits in terms of council tax, second from bottom in Lancashire, against Ribble Valley, really. So we have maintained a low council tax, mainly because of the things like income generation that have delivered savings to the council. So even with an increase, it's still below the other councils. So what will the budget deliver? Well, there's a number of different things in the budget, but capital investment, for example, well, we've got Tatton Gardens, the extra care scheme, and all the rest of the developments around there, including the pharmacy and the GP surgery. £15 million. Strawberry Meadows, the industrial estate, £9.2 million, and that's coming online next year as well. Whittle Health, as we all know, is £4 million, including a sort of community area for the parish council as well. And well, this is the big thing post-COVID that we're looking at, consolidating our council accommodation. So as I'm doing now, and many people are working from home, we need to revise or review exactly how much of the office accommodation we require. The Town Hall, Union Street, Bengal Street. At the moment, the budget's at 1.3 million. I think that will increase, but the benefits from reviewing it could be that we lease buildings to external organisations, or we sell them and benefit that way as well. So it's certainly something that this council and all councils really should be looking at as a result of post-COVID world, really. Playing open space, we've always had a large budget in there, many different schemes, most of which is funded through Section 106 or grants as well. So there's still an awful lot going on in terms of developing playing open space across the borough. Astley Hall, of course, we all know about, nearly complete, and £1.6 million was invested in that. And we've all seen it in the news in terms of what's delivered over the past year. Additional revenue investment. So the budget includes one-off additional reserves to fund things like support for apprentices and graduates within the council. to try and support those that have not been able to find jobs, especially post-COVID. Match funding for investment for plain open space. So these would be areas that the council don't own, but still need some work. So we could match fund with whichever organisation or parish owns those spaces, and we'll put £200,000 aside for that. Support for businesses. We already have a very well-developed grant scheme. Choose Chorley and the shop improvement grants. We're going to top that up with another £200,000. And continued financial support to deliver the green agenda. So £500,000 was put in the budgets 2 years ago, or maybe last year, and of that 240k has already been committed. So we want to top that back up to 500k to make sure that we continue the council's ambition to deliver a carbon neutral council by 2030. And the events for the Queen's Jubilee, this will support residents' events really in terms of celebrating the Jubilee next year. So they're the additional revenue investment that the budget proposes. And finally, well, we saw before that there was a budget deficit over £1 million. So what are we going to do about that? Well, we met very early on in July with SMT, the senior managers, to come and propose savings through the transformation board to try and come up with some solutions, both efficiency savings and income generation, to try and bridge this gap. We do this every year, but it is quite significant this year. We got a lot of decent proposals forward. One of them, as I already mentioned, is a review of the portfolio of assets in terms of sale or redevelopment or leasing them. The other one is to continue to invest in the borough. So the council's been very successful in terms of borrowing and using that borrowing to invest and generate income. But of course, the primary purpose of that would be to generate new jobs, improve housing, etc. But also with the added benefit of generating net income to the council, such as Market Walk, the extra care scheme, etc. And then, of course, to continue to explore the alternative models of service delivery. The council saved over £500,000 through shared services, and we'll explore other ways of developing those savings in the future. And also, this is just a finance thing, really, reprofiling of borrowing costs and capitalising staff salaries. An awful lot of staff work on capital projects, and we should really be charging those to the capital projects because of the work they're doing. So it's not just consultants working on these projects, it's also our own staff, including finance staff. So we should be looking to charge those to the assets as well. And that is the end of that, really. Hope that was within 15 minutes, but I'm happy to take any questions on the budget, really. So,
thank you, James. I mean, I know you've got to be slightly pessimistic when you've only got 12 months forward planning on what's happening in the future, and that's understandable. Have we any questions for James?
Very thorough then.
I don't think we're badly placed, Chair, are we really, for funding and things? We're not doing so bad, really. Up and down, I think there's people worse up and down the country than what we're doing, because Council of, I think, East Coast invested, it was 18 million into gas, and the firm's gone bankrupt, hasn't it? So, like, we're not, I don't think we're doing all right, I think, really, the budget, you know.
We've not got involved in energy, have we, James? Or you missed
No,
it?
we did look into it, but the numbers were astronomical, really, so we didn't bother. So. But you are right. Chorley is in a good position. Having £1 million deficit is very much manageable, and that is predicated, like you say, on some pessimistic assumptions regarding government funding. The senior management team, like I said, I've met, and we've already identified possibly up to £1 million worth of savings and additional income. Not all of it would be potentially politically acceptable, but there are others that we could generate savings and bridge that gap if it needs to be bridged at all, really. So yeah, you're absolutely right. Chorley are in a very good position, and a lot of that's due to the income generation that we've managed over the past few years, really. So.
think the other thing to say as well is that I think shared services will work quite well, haven't they, James? And as far as safety is concerned, and overall, I think it work quite well.
Absolutely, yeah. I would say that. Of course, I would say that because I'm one of the shared team, but I believe it's worked very well. Yes, and we've really shared our expertise and generated savings as a result of that as well. So.
Any more questions for James? And anybody online showing his hands? I think we're all right, James. Thank you for that report, and we'll move on to the next item. Thank you very much, and I hope you're soon feeling better or out of isolation.
Just want to leave the house, yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Number 4 is an item requested from Adlington Town Council. Does somebody want to lead on that, please?
I think Kevin O'Donnell was the town mayor of Adlington, was supposed to be leading on it. I know he was expecting to be on the call, but I think in a nutshell, Adlington Town Council, I mean, the statement is self-explanatory, but I think they were after support from other parishes and this sort of forum as a collective and the chair to perhaps collectively write to Lancashire County Council and express concern about this new charge for the £30 for the lamp posts, because I don't think people were aware of it. There doesn't appear to have been any consultation. It seems to be sort of aimed at, if an area isn't parished, they're not having to pay for it twice, and so on and so forth. It's very vague, some of the policies and stuff about, are they going to weigh each lamp post, are they going to weigh each basket separately, or what? How are they going to monitor it and so on? But I think Julia's got some comments to make as well. Thank you.
Go ahead, Julia.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's very perplexing. Obviously, it's come out of the blue, really, the expectation that parishes are expected to put up with a charge of £30-odd per streetlight where they're envisaging hanging a basket. So I was sent, because obviously I challenged this straight away because I just thought it was a bit mean when we're trying to make our high streets look blooming marvellous, particularly in the year that we're having the Platinum Jubilee in June. We want everything to be looking spick and span, and actually more than that, we want it to be looking glorious. I did some research and found out that back in the 80s, legislation was passed, and obviously there's a necessity to do a risk assessment on street lamps, particularly if you want to start hanging things from them, and that can be not just hanging baskets, but bunting or the Union Jack, whatever you want to hang from them. And across the UK, there is a system where whoever wants to do it, whether the business people or parish councils, they have to pay this money to allow this thing to happen. And there's a criteria, and I can circulate it to everybody, but basically it's saying that you've got to think about how fit a street light is to be taking on some weight, particularly a basket that needs watering. So it's like the ultimate weight of it. This all has to be assessed. So there's a charge. And across the UK, there's a lot of charges. But in some boroughs, particularly the City of Westminster, they're actually providing a grant to business people and parishes not necessarily parishes, to people to apply for, which would allow them to include the risk assessment charge, but to then allow them to even pay for the plants within the hanging baskets. So that seems like the ideal, but in Lancashire, we've got this situation where at the 11th hour being told, if you want to do it, it's going to cost you £30 plus for each one. So I've escalated this to the cabinet member, and basically I'm a bit concerned about where this decision's come from and why suddenly at the 11th hour we've had this notification. I do possibly think that it's been there for quite some time, but Lancashire haven't been calling in that charge. They've had, if you go on their website, there's a fees and charges PDF that basically has been out of date since 2018. And then what I've been sent is a draft formula to, you know, about all the criteria about what you've got to do to be able to go forward with putting a hanging basket on one of the Lancashire County Council's street lights. So I'm concerned. I've had some dialogue with some really helpful highways officers, but what my concern is that parish councils haven't budgeted for this increase in cost to provide, you know, these lovely high streets. And the difficulty we've got is, come this week, I think, most parish councils in Chorley would be asking Chorley Council to order particular plants for these hanging baskets. So most parish councils haven't budgeted for it. And I just think it's a bit mean in the 11th hour, in a year that we want things to look absolutely splendid, that they can't confirm, well, where's this cost come from? In the situation with Lancashire. We know stuff's going on everywhere else, but it's a bit mean and a bit late. And could they possibly negotiate or just get us round the table and try and agree what costs are going to be appropriate ongoing? Because a £30 charge every year is a bit much. It really is a bit much. And I know in Chorley Town Centre, they've just moved away from doing hanging baskets because why would you when you're being stung with a charge like that? It might be an appropriate charge, but it's just excessive, and we need to get around the table and come to some agreement. And unfortunately, I escalated this on the 12th of January. I'm looking to get a reply probably by 10 days, 22nd. I don't know how that fits in with the timetable for ordering plants, but what are we going to do? And what other surprises have we got out there that we're going to be loaded, you know, that's going to be inflicted on us, particularly if it's to do with, like, say, bunting or flags. We want to have street parties in June, so we need to resolve this problem as soon as possible. We want spring and summer to look glorious in our high streets, but particularly that weekend, we want things to be absolutely right. We need to get to that place, and we need the county council to respond.
I see Graham wants to come in. Thank you for your efforts, Julie. You've obviously put some work in there. Graham, what have you got to say on it?
Chair, can you hear me? Gordon, this agenda item 4, now I've only got this tonight, but there's some of this, unless you read this, you need to be a Philadelphia lawyer, because when you go through it, for example, on page 4, we will not allow, it starts off as a subparagraph, and the last attachment that involved the use of traffic signs or traffic signals. 3, attachment that you wish to make to concrete, aluminium, cast iron, stainless steel or GRP arranged. And then coming up, attachments that relate to any form of advertising or obstruction or distract from traffic signals, litter bins, dog excrement receptacles, a lot. Well, I live, as you know, off Babylon Lane, and the local estate agents put signs on. We've got a sign hanging off a lamppost at present saying you're going into a speed awareness zone and this, that and the other. So it just doesn't add up at all. But when you turn the page, unless I know I'm not brain of Britain, and it says page 15, in line with guidance contained in PLG 06, licenses of consent will be valid for no more than 30 months. So if you get a £30 license, correct me if I'm wrong, Gordon, but does that last for 2.5 years and maybe less in certain areas? Following the expiry of a license consent period, the applicant will need to reapply for permission for the equipment to be reaffixed or remain in place for a further period and pay a further license fee as appropriate. Now, as you carry on, coming from my civils background, There's an item here that says page 2, the very last paragraph, where they determine the loss of thickness of the lamp posts between 0 and 10%, up to 7 years old. I'm not being funny, Gordon, but I don't think somebody from Lancashire County is going to take the access panel off and put in a micrometer or other measuring device across the bottom of the lamppost to see as it's losing between 1 and 10%. Now, East Charnock only have 6 hanging baskets, and we pay about £600 or £700 a year for that. Those 6 hanging baskets is got £180. So technically speaking, to make our boots balance, we'll have to get rid of 1 hanging basket. And East Charnock Parish Council support Adlington and think that this should not be taking place. And quite frankly, Gordon, I don't think Lancashire County will be doing this. It'd be like when the council tax started. Oh, we'll have a drive-by. Oh, that's a bandee. Oh, that's a bandee. They'll drive by. They won't even get out the car and say, oh, paint's not flaked off the bottom yet, so it must be all right. So as far as we are concerned, Gordon, East Charnock support Adlington that this should not be implemented. Thank you.
Thank you, Graham. Either of you want to come back? Do you want to come back, Julie, at all?
Well, I was saying, just make your feelings heard, because, like I say, my concern is that this is only a draft document you've been sent. So has it been signed off? Has it been ratified by any committee at county? And if you, like I say, if you go on the website, their fees and charges document hasn't been updated for like 3 years. So have they had this thing in place since the 80s and they just haven't charged us? And if that's the case, you know, we just really, like I say, get round the table, let's sort this out, particularly this year, whilst it's more than a bit of a shock to us. Could they not be reasonable and just disregard it? They need to obviously risk assess these street lights, because they might not be in fit condition to have anything being attached to them. And we understand that. We don't want to do anything that is unsafe, but we need to have some representation and get some decision from them that's palatable, really, particularly for this year.
Sure.
Thank you. Yes, Deborah.
There's a long history of LCC trying to overcharge for things. And a good example is, as a lot of you know, I've been involved with athletics for many years. And if we wanted to put signs up, having maybe put them up 20 years in a row, we had to do the Security Industries Association training. We were being charged £96 a year just for the training to go up a stepladder. Then we were going to be charged by LCC for us putting our signs up. And in fact, when we've gone ahead and done it, we've done it with police permission, which is illegal, to be honest. But at the end of the day, there's a long history of LCC doing this, because, to be honest, using the phrase of drive-by that just been mentioned before, they haven't got a clue what they're doing. So Wealton support you. We think this is absolutely ludicrous.
Coral, I think everybody's in agreement on anybody else will speak. Could we possibly write to County Councillor Edwards, Charlie Edwards, saying that obviously, as the liaison group, the parish council strongly object to these charges, and it does seem a bit draconian when it's the Queen's Platinum anniversary to be bringing in these charges when we want our streets to look really good, we want to put a good show on. We don't really think these charges are necessary. And would everybody be okay with that? I mean, it's all we can do as a liaison, but we can certainly do that. Yes, Ken?
I was just going to say, I think it would be beneficial in terms of the power of, you know, a big group of people. In addition to that, for individual parishes to write their own letters or emails and so forth to the cabinet member as well. And I think if you write your letter from Gordon, to also copy in all the county councillors so that people are aware of cross-party, the frustration about it really, and the unfairness. Thank you.
Sorry, Julia.
Yeah,
Go
could
on.
I just, whilst we're on this theme of being charged with stuff, obviously most parish councils will want to really embrace the Platinum Jubilee time. You know, we've got four bank holidays where we want to just do a proud, really. Is that there's a necessity to apply really, really early for street parties. We want street parties everywhere, and a condition of having a street party, if you've got to liaise with the police, there will be charges from county council. And I don't think even Chorley Council has really got sort of packaged together that is accessible for people. So I would just ask you, if you're thinking about doing stuff in your parishes, coordinate as best you can with businesses and residents and, you know, faith groups, whoever wants to do things around having a, you know, celebrating the Jubilee. You need to be asking the council, both councils, you know, what have they got, what do we need to do? Because there might be money involved. So just do it early so that we're not let down or not shocked by how excessive some of the charges might be, just to, you know, keep everyone safe and for us all to have a good time.
Thank you, Julia. That's yeah, you're quite right. We need to have a good time and something to celebrate at last. Right, moving on. Quickly flick it over, see what's on next. We're on to item 5, which is an item requested by Croston Parish Council. Is there anybody here from Croston who wants the lead on that one? It's the one on planning. I think we have said that we've had problems, haven't we, with the planning. Do you want to lead on that? Sorry.
Hello, hi. So from a planning perspective, it's difficult to say what type of planning advice. Is it pre-application advice they want, or is it enforcement advice that's needed, or is it just general advice about planning? So it has been a difficult time for the planning team, especially through the pandemic. There has been an extremely large increase in planning applications, but also planning appeals. There is an enforcement officer in the council, and we've got some consultancy work. So we have got a team of enforcement officers. So if it is an enforcement issue, that can be dealt with. There is also an opportunity to do some pre-application planning advice if parish councils do need that, if they want to make some applications. And I think the general message is that information about individual applications is generally on the website. But we do obviously have the call centre that people can call into if they don't have access to the website, and we can provide information on individual applications if people don't have access to the information on the website. But if there is anything specific, any specific concerns, if people do let us know, I can speak directly to the planning team to find out. Thank you.
Yes, Terry, go on.
And one of the key issues that the parish councils have is getting planning applications in A4 format. Now, I think it's 5 years ago at this liaison meeting, we did talk about the council maybe providing A3 printers, because long term they were saving money because we were printing up the plans. So I think we need to refloat this again with the council, that maybe they should invest in the parish councils with A3 printers, because we are saving money by printing our own planning applications as they come through. But A4, given the age distribution in parish councils, is just too small.
You want to come back on that, Jennifer?
Well, it's something that we can look into. So, so at the moment, presumably you've just got A4 printers, and you'd like to be able to print them out rather than view them on the screen. with the parish councils.
When you look at the size of an A4 sheet with cramped details on it, you can't make a value judgment. So at the end of the day, when we've gone into the offices, what did they turn up with? A3 sheets. We need that. We're going to be saving you money long term.
Something we can look into, Terry. I've got to say, just recently, I'm on the planning committee, and we've had few items on, but that generally means that we're going to get some very busy ones before very much longer. Right, moving on, we've got an item requested by EP Parish Council, which is to do with fly tipping. I don't think there's anybody here from EP Parish Council. What I will say on fly tipping, as people probably know, I'm in the sort of Brinscall area, but it's EP, Wealdon, Withnell, and I've got to say the street scene are excellent. If you report something to street scene on a Monday, by Tuesday, it will be moved, and often the manager, Arthur, will even be aware if it's on social media. He will have even picked up on it. Now, I think what EP are particularly after is, I don't know offhand how many enforcements we've had, but enforcement on fly tipping is very, very difficult because people do it in out-of-the-way places. Unless somebody is, I don't know how to word it, but daft enough to leave an address or something implicating somebody within the rubbish, it's very, very difficult. If you've got somebody who's actually takes a photograph of the vehicle doing it, but that I'd be careful about doing that. It's very, very difficult to prosecute people. Yes, it's annoying, and obviously it does cost ratepayers money. You know, the street scene manager, Arthur's sorting it out very, very well, but yes, he's sending officers out to move rubbish, and this is costing the ratepayers, and yes, it is an annoyance, but very, very difficult. They're not going to put fly tip in the middle of town under a CTV camera. They're going to go somewhere back and beyond. They know where they're going. I had an area just up on the moors, and somebody actually tipped a full disabled bathroom with a walk-in shower. You know, that had been taken out from somebody, and that's a business. But that's the only comment I make. Julia?
Yeah, as a resident of Heath, it is a concern to me. I regularly go out running, and obviously I'm a bit like the fly tipping police, often, you know, stop, take photographs, report, because there's a particular concentration of fly tipping around High House Lane. And unfortunately, what the message that needs to go out, and perhaps we can do some work with the hyperlocal Facebook pages, just getting out on social media about the necessity to report if you see anything suspicious like this. It's a cost to every individual when somebody fly tips like that. And you're right, Gordon, there's very little, you know, we're talking about people's like dining tables and chairs. We're talking like significant fly tips. We're not talking like a bag of rubbish. And it's appalling, shouldn't be happening. But, you know, even I don't, and I'm really vigilant, don't actually spot anything untoward going on. So I see the evidence of, you know, some antisocial, irresponsible persons done. And we need to also warn people about accepting, you know, a man in a van who's prepared to do something at cut price. You know, they are not going to be responsible. You know, you pay a decent rate, you know who's picking up your stuff, and so that you can ensure that it's being disposed of safely and responsibly. But at the moment, yeah, we just need to impress on people about reporting.
Thank you, Julia. Yeah, Higher House Lane is just the sort of place they would use because it's quiet, it's not well used, and yeah. So, Katrina, sorry.
Do they not have to have a licence? I know when we moved to Exton over 12, 13 years ago, we had some rubbish removed. and this gentleman had a licence. Do we have a list where people can check that these licences are real? They could mean anything, couldn't they?
That's a good point, actually. I think it's one I may have to come back to you on, Katrina. Sorry, do you know anything on that, Jennifer?
No, trading standards have a safe trading scheme at Lancashire County Council, so you're always best looking at the safe trader. But I don't think there's a list of licensed waste carriers that members of the public can have access to, because the Environment Agency, they license some. So I know it's not us as a borough council, but I will have a look, see if we can find one.
Thank you, that is a good point. Ian? How on then?
Press my button. I worked every tip in Lancashire, from Silverdale to Blackpool to Nelson to Burley. I used to have documents from County Council that I had information for every vehicle what came in, contract people, had to be registered. I had loads of stuff, because I worked on every tip, make bulldozers, you know. And they had a sheet then where people who were registered could come on and tip. I was working up Nelson, I was transferred to Nelson. About 80 loads of fill had been brought in, but it hasn't been registered. And the chairman, the foreman who was running it, I had a fiddle job going on, and he got backhanded, you see. So I said, I'm not touching anything until it's sorted out. Oh, he says, you'll be out of a job like for it. I said, all right, well. And it went on television. I'm still here anyway to tell the story that I think at the time, going back 30 years now, there was you could get information from County Council who was registered for land, for tip, you know what I mean, to go, you know.
We'll look into it, Alan. Yes, sorry, I don't know your name.
Katie.
Katie.
And was that, do you think we should report in the first place to Chorley Council or you?
I would probably go, my own personal feelings would be to go to Chorley Council to report it to street scene. If it's then on United Utilities land, then United Utilities will, I think street scene would then inform United Utilities. I think that's how it works. Yeah, everybody seems to be agreeing with that. That's how it works. I mean, if on a landowner's land, then it's their responsibility to move it. Ratepayers should be paying to move rubbish off private land. But, yeah, if you report it to street scene, they'll sort it out. They'll either move it or they'll get somebody to move it. Yes, Jennifer?
Just to say, we have got enforcement powers if a private landowner refuses to remove rubbish from his land, especially if it's of public health significance. We do get a lot of complaints about private land and rubbish dumping, and I do feel sorry for the landowners because it's not their rubbish, but they've still got responsibility to keep the land clean, like we have as well as a council.
Anybody else on that subject? I think, as I say, we do pretty well in Chorley about dealing with fly tipping, but it's just annoying that the council in the main part is doing it and ratepayers are paying for it, but you've got to try and keep the place tidy. Thank you. Item 7 is question from members of Liaison and the public. Have we any questions from the public, Coral? Oh,
It's basically to alert parish councils and the council itself. What's come to light recently is that Southlands High School the trust is going to reduce the pupil admission numbers on the grounds that they want to provide a better quality of education for the ones there. I'm not used to swearing, but I actually came out with the phrase bullshit. Basically, what they are doing is reducing the numbers in order to create more interest in the school. We've got a situation at the moment with Botany Bay that if that development takes place, kids are going to be bussed out to Lostock Hall, Wigan, Blackburn, because there aren't places in Chorley enough to take our kids. So at the end of the day, there is a move afoot, we think, from the educational point of view, that some of the schools are going to try and reduce their pupil admission numbers throughout the borough. And I think we've just got to be vigilant.
Thank you, Terry. The only thing I can say on that at the present moment is I know that Councillor Alistair Bradley, Councillor Peter Wilson and my wife, Councillor Margaret Franz and Gary as Chief Executive have had meetings with the education people last week. As yet they haven't reported the outcome of that meeting, but I know Margaret was particularly aware of it, and as I say, we are talking. To be fair, at Withnail Parish Council, that subject was brought up, and Councillor Collins was on the call. It was a Teams call, and he made it quite clear that the County Council actually object to this reduction in places as well.
Can I just come in, Julie? The problem we've got is a trust is not accountable to the County Council.
Thank you, Terry. Yes, Julia.
I just want to keep you up to date with where I've been. I'm Vice Chair of Education Scrutiny Committee for Education and Children's Services, and we had a meeting yesterday where I actually raised the issue because we were due to be reported back to at this particular meeting on with an update about the situation around school places across Lancashire, and obviously we've got particular interest in Chorley. So what's been happening from September to November, there's been some dialogue with local schools to ascertain really how we're going to be address particularly high school place shortages. And we haven't had that feedback yet, and we haven't had publication really of all our high schools in Chorley are academies. We can complain all we like, but it's a decision of the academy really as to what they do as far as the school roles. And that's regrettable really when we're actually trying to encourage the school community to look at remodelling and accommodating higher numbers until we make that threshold where, you know, we justify having a new school. It's a very worrying situation with particularly the increase of children having to go across the borough, you know, going out the district to get a school place. So let's hope we have some resolution. But this is the situation we're in. What would happen is we can complain, and as a council we can complain, as a group here tonight we can complain, but that will go to the National Adjudication Officer, who will then weigh that up. It's not our gift, unfortunately, to, no matter how angry and upset and disappointed we are that's happening. And let the school put their case to us so that we have some view that it's a reasonable thing for them to do. But at the moment, you know, we just feel a bit out of it, really. We're a bit powerless, and let's just hope, like I say, within the next few days, I've got a meeting on, I think it's the 3rd of February, where the chair of the scrutiny committee is being told about this particular issue. We need the feedback now. We need the feedback now.
Can I
so
come
that
back
we know.
on that then, Julie?
Yeah.
At the end of the day, what the trust are trying to do is create a situation of supply and demand, enhanced demand, so they get full capacity schools. But the problem with that, I mean, I as a deputy head teacher, in the glorious old days, our pupil admission number was set by government, then the county council. It's just allowing people to roughshod over the intake numbers in the schools in our area. So at the end of the day, if we don't all complain to them, they won't respond anyhow. They need to bow to pressure. Now, this happened in Birmingham, and they did bow to pressure because parents wrote in, local authorities wrote in, even government wrote in, with one school there. So at the end of the day, all the parish councils will be affected. Your children will be affected because reduced number intake in Chorley means they're going to be bused everywhere.
Could I just come back, Chair? Sorry, just very briefly.
Certainly, Julia.
What we need to be aware of is there isn't a particularly, how would you remedy this? Would you build new schools? The government do not have a building new schools policy. We have a rebuilding because we've sort of got a crisis with significant numbers of schools that need rehabilitating. And what we've dealt with for the past few years is remodelling of schools. If you go to any of our high schools, they have had some new builds, but we're talking about probably 900 plus pupils in our high schools. And you can imagine that movement of pupils around that building in sort of what we see is quite archaic now. We're not sort of open plan to any extent. So to a degree, pupils are crammed in, and for particularly vulnerable children, that's a really bad environment for them to be in. So we need to hear Southland's case as to why they are going forward with this reduction, but we really do need to ask, it's a big ask, that the remaining high schools try and accommodate the shortfall in school places. We have a prediction by the time we get to 2026 of having we're adrift by 400 high school places. The magic number for a new school is 600, and if we go early with building a new school, which people can ask for if they want a free school or whatever school they want, if we go early with providing a new school, it has an impact on the existing school community because, we want all our schools to be viable and healthy and accessible to everyone that wants to go to that school. It's something we need to keep a close eye on. And like I say, within the next few weeks, hopefully we'll have something coming back to us about how we're going to remedy this difficult situation we've got in Chorley, particularly.
I think Kim wants to have a quick word now.
Wrong one. I was just going to say, I wrote to the cabinet member at the county council about it just before Christmas because obviously it would have, the proposals that Southlands have put forward would drastically affect my division as well. And just shortly before that, a few weeks before that, the county council actually published their school places strategy for the next couple of years, and they're actually saying that by September 2022 that they have a target that we would need 60 additional school places in Chorley, secondary school places in Chorley Borough. So that's this year. Put that on top, if this goes through for this additional 20 in the next 12 months, that's 80 additional secondary school places. Now the response that I got back from Jane Rea was actually saying that the Southlands and the Academy Trust are actually refusing to engage with the Education Authority, and the County Council is objecting to their proposals. There's no opportunity for them to hear their case because they won't engage with them. And subsequently, there is a potential that it might end up going to the Department for Education, because the Department for Education have provided them, via the County Council, the Education Authority, with a hell of a lot of money over the last few years on the premise that they accept a certain number of pupils. And if they're going to backtrack on that, there are potentials for fines and all sorts. So it's quite serious stuff, to be honest, because as Terry says, if one school does it, then it's only a matter of time before others do. Thanks.
Yes, Katrina.
Could I ask that this be put on the agenda in the summertime when we have a bit more information, in the 6 months agenda, and then we can look at it more closely and actually get some info from the education.
Julie, do you want to come back on that?
Just also be aware that I think quite early doors, Chorley Council Scrutiny Committee is dealing with education from all aspects. So obviously we can keep you informed, and we'd welcome anyone to participate in.
But if it's on the agenda, it's there.
We can put it. Can we do that, Carol? To put that as an agenda item? Yes, certainly, Katrina.
I think
no
the key
problem at all.
point, Chair, going back to it, the more parish councils write into the trusts, particularly the Southlands one, which is the starter trust, the more likely we're going to get them to come to the table.
That's very true. The more, the better. Can we write as a body just to say that we are would we say concerned about? Sorry, deeply. Yeah, fair enough, Julia. Yeah, you're right. Deeply concerned about the school numbers, and Chorley, our secondary school numbers, should we say? Right, item number 8 is items for future meetings. Please let Democratic Services know if you would like an agenda item. Adding the deadline for the next submission of items is Friday the 4th of March. So obviously if there's anything anybody, I mean obviously Katrina's one for schools we've already dealt with, but if anybody wants to put something forward now or have a think about it, go away. Yes, Katie.
Can I put something forward for Anglesark, which was about, I think, Kim, have you visited Anne, one of the residents? 'Cause we had our parish council meeting last night, and they were talking about the road again that had been resurfaced not long ago. Was it like 18 months, 2 years ago? And saying that, I don't know whether she's got confused, she said she wasn't sure, but was it going to be potentially done again because of the pothole situation?
She didn't raise it, no.
Right,
But we
okay.
can take it up, we can have a discuss it after the meeting if you want.
Yeah.
and I'll
Yeah,
raise
that's
it.
fine. Yeah, or I could put it on the agenda for the next one, because they were just talking about it last night and saying that they wanted to know if, because they weren't happy with the job that was done last time, and
Yeah, it was a mess, we went up there yesterday.
yeah, and that it had been washed away, but apparently somebody had said it would need 120 tonnes of top, whatever it is, I'm not very good at the technical side of it, like more or less over the next 10 years. And
Oh, you took about White Copies.
Yeah,
The road to White
yeah,
Sorry, I
White
thought you were
Copies.
talking about
Yeah.
the main road.
no, because Anglesark and White Copies, it's all that. It's all,
You want to
isn't it?
update on that? Because Gordon's been leading
Right,
on it.
and
in
there was
terms of-
concerns about where this 120 tonne figure that was getting washed off was actually going to go, because obviously around that area we don't want it in the river or the reservoirs, or that, and did you know about it? And it was just a discussion last night that they wanted me to raise for more information.
What I'm trying to do at the moment, although I seem to be struggling with that one, is going back to March last year, United Utilities agreed to match fund EP Parish Council to do some repairs.
Right.
Now, Matthew Upton said he would go away, and I think one of his under managers called Peter had come back with some estimates.
Right.
That's what I'm struggling with. I cannot get the estimates out of them.
So why would Heapley be matching it? Is it because it's part of Anglesark, isn't it? So
Is it the one to the cricket pitch?
yes, the one
Yeah.
at the bottom of where the house
Yeah,
of
the
Anglesark
cricket
are.
pitch one is actually in Heapy, that one.
Oh right, okay.
Yeah.
So
It's
even though it affects them.
EP Parish Council has some money in reserve for that.
right.
What United Utilities said they would do is match fund them. How many times have I emailed to try and get that quote? Many times. Kim,
I think
it's
the
always
impacts
Kim
of like
in.
lockdown and the amount of visitors we had over the
Well,
last 18 months to the area has just made it completely go back to,
I think
if not worse than what it was before.
I think basically because the land or the road is unregistered, and obviously Chorley Council did it as part of a neighbourhood project last time, but it was done like as low cost as possible because it can only go so far. I think what all the different bodies have said is they acknowledge that thousands of people come down here. The councils look for like grants and stuff that they can apply for. There doesn't seem to be anything like available for them to apply for in terms of, they thought, you know, with it being the Triple SI and one of the gateways to the West Pennine Moors. But I know Gordon's had some conversations with Chorley Council, and in terms of actually getting people together, you're more likely to get some money together for it if different people put in the pot, because
Right.
technically it's not the council's responsibility.
Okay.
So, like, I know Chorley Council have said, well, if other people put in, then we'll consider putting a bit in.
Yeah.
Heapy Parish Council have, as he said, have put a bit in, and have got that in reserve.
How
haven't they?
much are we looking for? What is it like?
Well, United Utilities said to you, didn't they, that they would be prepared to do the work and provide the men to do it. But basically, they'd do the quotes and stuff and come back with the final cost. Now,
Right.
we've been, 12 months?
Not
and
quite.
they seem to just be ghosting God.
Not quite, but we're probably 10.
See, I think the concern was the fact that someone said that they hadn't, it wants kicking off, whatever that means, but they're saying that it's not, it's just going to, if they do it the same way again, it's just going to end up doing the same thing again, so what's the point of spending the money on it? In that it needs to have a better job done to make it last longer for the...
Yeah, the problem is it's unregistered and unowned.
And
So
no one wants to take
it's nobody's
responsibility
responsibility. So you're trying to, it's like Kim said, you're trying to get people, nobody wants to admit responsibility. Everybody, if United Utilities and the Parish Council do it together, they won't admit any responsibility for the upkeep.
Right.
It'll be a one-off payment, as was Chorley's. I managed to get that. Really, ideally, that road possibly could do with tarmacking, but if it was, then will we get the boy races up and down there with the little packets? Maybe. But for that, you'd be looking at a funding of, well, the last time I did it 3 years ago, we were looking at 28,000.
Right.
So an awful lot of money. That's what it was in 2018.
Okay.
So I think that's probably realistically 32 or 34 now.
So
Somewhere
shall I
around
just
that ilk.
report back to Anglesart that you are looking to try and get hold of you?
I'm doing my best. We might just be able to give them a nudge back with Kim.
Yeah, and I know because Anglesart doesn't have like a massive population, but if you've got any SIL funding or anything like that, you know, or anything like that, the council could then, if you've got any SIL funding or anything like that, that you could consider putting into, because then you can demonstrate that, because you know you
But
can.
we did have some money from the building of.
I know you've had one or two properties built.
Yeah, so I mean, there is that. I don't know how much it is though, but obviously
every little helps. It just demonstrates that people, rather than expecting one group or one group to go and sort it out.
Yeah, I'll put that back. Thanks.
You want to just have a word on that, Terry?
Well, I think we've got to be mindful of the geology of the area. It's very similar to Well Lane in Brinscombe. Well Lane was tarmacked. It just needed one storm and the whole road was washed away. That's what happens at White Copies. So it's going to need a fundamental civil engineering project, and that's big money.
Right, so have we got a date for the next meeting? It's what, sorry? Oh, right. Sorry, you wanted to come back, Karen?
Hi, yeah, I just was for future meetings, I was hoping that we could, and I think we had mentioned it before, getting Chorley Edwards for the highways department to come and answer questions, because a lot of the parish councils do have questions that we would like to ask him. So I wondered if we could actually approach him and see if he could come and join one of our meetings.
Certainly a good point, and Keith Eden went in his day, didn't he? Keith came
Yes,
a few
he
times.
did.
Yeah, so can we ask for that, Coral? Charlie Edwards to attend a meeting.
Yes, Chair, we can certainly request that County Councillor Edwards attends the meeting. It would be helpful if we could provide in advance what the questions are that we are going to ask him, just to ensure that we do get a response.
I think we may have quite a few.
Fair enough, but it always helps if he's got them in advance, and then obviously can come ready prepared with some information. I mean, I know people sometimes think of a quick question at the meeting, which is all right, you can take it away, but you don't want him taking a list full away.
No.
You know what I mean? But yeah, we'll certainly do that.
Thank you.
Anybody else before I close the meeting? And I've not got a date and time, Carol, for the next meeting. When is it? It's not on here. I don't seem to be able to find it.
16th of March.
It's the 5th of March.
16th of March.
16th of March, yeah. And the deadline for submissions of items to go on is the 4th of March. So if people would just be mindful of that. I've no urgent business, so with that, thank you for your attendance, and I'll close the meeting. Thank you very much.